good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our session about the telecommunications industry in the future. I'm not sure who of you was at the Etihad Museum yesterday. There were some people, like, for example, the whole panel, and there was an exhibit about the personal belongings of some of the founding fathers of the UAA, and I spotted an old device, which all you know, it was a how is it called? A rotary dial telephone. You remember those things where you have to know whom you are calling and the number, very cumbersome to put in the number? All of us used them in the use, and that's 30 years ago or even longer. And nowadays, telecommunication changed quite a bit. We all have interesting devices which we're using all the time, but not the devices only changed. The way we are communicating changed. In the past, it was voice only. Now we can text, we can chat, we can send images, we can have video conferences, we can even meet in an immersive environment in virtual reality. And of course, the devices changed as well. From the fixed line phone, to the mobile phone, to smartwatches, to headsets, to wearable AI pins that came out this month, to headsets for virtual and augmented reality. But also the risks changed. In the past, if the landline didn't work, it was not nice, but it was just something that didn't work. Today, if the network is going down, our vital infrastructure is in danger. And there are other risks like scam calls, like cybersecurity risks. That is what changed in the last 30 years. And that is just the beginning. And we want to explore today a little bit more what's happening in the next 10 years. We want to look at the technology, at the applications, the use cases that this technology is enabling, and if we have enough time, also a little bit about the risks. And for that, the Future Forum of Dubai assembled over 70 years of telco know-how here in the form of our panel. My name is Stefan, I'm working for Deutsche Telekom, and it's my pleasure to moderate this panel today. And I have with me, on the one hand side, Ganeshi, he's Research Director at the GSMA Intelligence, with 15 years of experience. For those of you who don't know the GSMA, it's a global alliance of all the telco operators. And he's an expert for all relevant topics we are discussing today, like 5G, 6G, AI, IoT. And he's really a thought leader for mobile networks from a technology as well as a use case perspective. Next to him, we have Abdul Rahman. He's our local hero. He's the Director of Policies and Programs Department at the UAE Telecommunication and Digital Government Regulatory Authority. A very long title. A lot of responsibility with him. As an engineer with over 19 years of experience, he aims to create the best environment and framework for the digital infrastructure here in the region. And last but not least, we have Lotfi from Meta, the company behind Facebook, WhatsApp, and Instagram. Responsible for the connectivity and access policy at Meta, he works on creating a regulatory and policy environment for the connectivity of tomorrow based on his 20-plus years experience in the telco sector. So I think we know a little bit about the telco system in the past, but what's happening in the future? As we look at this space here, we are kind of in the orbit around talking about satellites. So, Ganeshi, how will non-traditional communication technologies, like, for example, satellite or low Earth orbit devices, affect our communication in the future? What's your thought on that?
Yeah, thank you so much, Stefan, and hello, everyone. Let's, talk about the traditional terrestrial networks. So we've got the mobile networks, we've got the fixed line networks. I was seeing how these networks have helped to extend connectivity to where we are today. But you still have people who are outside, of these networks. According to our research, it's about 560 million people who either don't have any form of connectivity whatsoever or what we call the connectivity edge. So there's some coverage, but it's limited. It's poor. This is a huge number. I mean, it's the size of maybe the USA plus, several other countries. So how do we get these people connected? In the last few years, we've seen innovations in aerial technologies, satellites being one of them. We also have what we call the NTNs, the non-terrestrial networks. People talked about drones carrying connectivity. we think, that these NTNs, these aerial technologies will play a very important role in the connectivity landscape going forward. It's not just about connecting the unconnected, as important that is. I mean, that's really important. If we're talking about a digital future, then if you have close to 500 million people, or about 500 million people who are not connected, that's a significant number, and we don't want to leave anyone behind. So importantly, they're going to help, to connect the unconnected. But beyond that, satellite technologies, non-terrestrial technologies will play a key role in enabling the networks of the future. So if we are talking about ubiquitous networks, if we are talking about reliable networks, then we're going to have to, we're going to need these aerial technologies to complement the terrestrial technologies that we have today. But what we need to begin to think about, what kinds of partnerships can we pretty much put together to bring these industries together. When I joined the GSMA close to 10 years ago, we really used the S word, satellite. But today, we're talking so much about it. So that's the mobile industry, that's the satellite industry, and there's a whole new ecosystem developing, around aerial networks. We need to begin to bring these ecosystems together to create, ubiquitous network coverage everywhere, both in urban areas, in rural areas, and even, in space, at sea, wherever, so we can have that, connectivity all around that can enable new solutions of the future.
Okay, so connecting the unconnected, I think that's beyond discussion. But when it's about complementing the existing network, so it's the perspective from a regulatory point of view, because you're competing different companies for the same resources like spectrum. So what's your thought, Abdul Rahman?
Yes, first of all, good afternoon, everyone. I know I have a bad voice, so mind me. Unfortunately, this is a forum, not a concert. Otherwise, I'm sure everyone will ask for a refund. So I think we have a good experience in the UAE when it comes to connectivity. Maybe I'll share a short story first. I had the pleasure to meet one of the founders of the internet, Dr. Steve Crocker, a couple of years ago. And when I had this opportunity, I asked him a question. And it was about IP addresses. So if you're aware, the internet is based on IP addresses, traditionally IPv4, and there were finite number of IP addresses, so 4 billion addresses. So I asked him this question. I said, when you were architecting the networks back in the 1960s, end of 60s they started, why did you choose only addresses enough for 4 billion devices? What was what you were thinking at the time? Basically, he said, we thought about what do we need to connect. And at the time, computers were very, very expensive. And you would probably see computers or mainframes in large institutions, maybe universities, corporates. So we thought how many computers we would have. They're very expensive. And we thought, if every institution have a computer, we'll still have, a couple of zeros to fill. So we never thought that there will be a time where, today you have, probably tens of devices per person, maybe potentially even hundreds of them. So I think the point is you have to imagine the future. And today you have to think about what investments you have to make. And we've done this in the UAE. I mean, the connectivity options we have from fiber optics to 5G to even satellites. We have every possibility there. And we have to be technology neutral, i.e. we have to allow each and every technology to be tested, to see its potential and allow it. And of course, we have to have an environment where whoever investing in these technologies potentially can be in a healthy business. They can, get their investments back, and then reinvest again in the infrastructure. And this is what happened in the UAE. We invested in radio technologies, in fiber optics. Today we have fiber everywhere. We cover 99% of population with fiber optics. And today that's the technology that we rely on. Does it mean that we're there and we don't need anything else? Not, definitely not. And I'll give you an example. When you travel, for example, you are on an airplane. Nowadays, you have very limited connectivity. You have very slow bandwidth on aircraft. And sometimes it's peaceful. You stop receiving these WhatsApp messages. But at the same time, maybe you need to run a business. Maybe you need to look after, your performance of a business, or maybe connect with your, children or kids. And today, the expectation of user is that they want to see the same experience when they are on aircraft. And how this is possible? I think we have a solution. We have the low Earth orbit satellites, the like of Starlink, for example. And that would fill the gap of, for example, in the aviation or in maritime and other industries. So the point is, we have to allow any technology that have value and promise to be tested, to be, invested. And then, of course, the regulatory framework have to adapt for this as well and have to allow it. And so all options are open.
Thank you, Abdurrahman. Actually, before joining Meta, I worked for 6 years with a satellite company. So I just wanted to add a bit on what has been said about satellite communications. I think the satellite communication used to be constrained by a number of factors, which led to the access capacity being expensive, and this perceived underperformance that Abdurrahman mentioned, which is the issues with the throughput and the latency. But with the recent development and the launch of mega LEO constellations, I think these barriers are being very much reduced to a level where I think we are seeing now a paradigm shift, whereby satellite connectivity or satellite communications are no longer a niche market, but may become mass and mainstream in the future. And actually, this opened up huge opportunities, including for the telcos as well, to expand their reach. And this has helped with the integration of the satellite link and the standards, the 3GPP standards for 5G and 6G, which was not the case before. The standards were done in silos for the satellite, and I think this integration will help to reduce the digital divide. But again, I think it will reduce the connectivity gap, but I think we need to still look at the usage gap, because I think there are studies by GSMA and the UN Broadband Forum that show now that while the connectivity gap is shrinking, there is still a big issue with the usage gap. So people that have coverage but are not able to use it because of digital skills, lack of digital skills, or issues with affordability as well.
And I'll just give you those numbers if you don't mind. So 560 million not covered, but another 2.8 billion covered but not using the mobile internet. Exactly. So the usage gap is obviously bigger than the coverage gap.
Yes.
Okay, so that brings us to the usage. So what we learned is technology will solve so that everyone is connected and better connected than today. Yeah. The question is, what will people are doing with the internet? The ones that are connected or the ones that will be connected, especially when we talk about 6G. I mean, everyone is now talking about 5G and has 5G on his phones, but we are, as an industry, already working on 6G. So, Keneshi, are there any specific use cases what you think 6G will enable that are not common today?
Yes, I mean there are several. I want to believe everyone in the room, pretty much know the Gs, the 2G, 3G, 4G, and 5G. Now, 5G was quite transformational. I mean, if I start from 3G, basically they have been developed to address future needs. So when 3G was developed in the 2G era, it was to meet the need for greater voice capacity and video calls, 4G to meet the need for mobile broadband, and 5G, which was transformational to meet the need of industry verticals. So now we're talking about 6G. What's 6G? What's it meant to do? I think the context will really give us the ability to begin to picture in our minds, what 6G could eventually do in terms of use cases. So we all know how 5G improved 4G tremendously. 6G will do even more, compared to 5G. So we're looking at, about 100 times faster speed. For 5G, you're looking at, 5 milliseconds in terms of latency. For 6G, you're down to the microseconds. And in terms of capacity, and this is really interesting, for 4G, you could connect, up to 100,000 devices per 1 square kilometer. For 5G, that's increased to 1 million devices, per square kilometer. And for 6G, the expectation is up to 10 million devices per square kilometer. So what does this mean in practice and in terms of use cases? There are so many use cases that are being discussed, at the moment. But as an industry, we've grouped these use cases into 4 broad categories. So you're looking at, enhanced human communication, enhanced machine communications, enabling, new services. So these are, some of the broad categories that we're looking at. For specific use cases, I want to call out, a few of them. The first one would be digital twins, interactive mapping. I think this will be critical for how smart cities and future factories are going to work. Because today, you have the physical world. If you wanted to understand what's going on in a city like Dubai, you may have to send your workers out, to different parts of the city to know where there are issues, what you need to change, and how you need to improve things. But where you have digital twins, you have a digital version of that physical world, no matter how big it is. And with 6G, you can interact with it instantly, in real time. So where there is a leakage in a corner of town, okay, before you send your workers to go see it, you've already seen it in the digital twin. So it becomes a lot easier to tackle that problem, and of course, faster to do that. It's going to transform healthcare. Talked about, the number of devices that can be connected to a 6G network. So what it means, you talked about people having tens of devices. Well, in a 6G world, it's going to be hundreds of devices, because it's not going to be only the wearables, your wristwatch or your, smart glasses or whatever, but it's also going to be devices that are in your body, pretty much monitoring every vital metric in your body and transmitting in real time to your doctor or your hospital, so the moment there is an issue, that can very quickly, be addressed. So it goes on and on, but I don't know if any of these ones, have my colleagues, want to chip in to some of the use cases.
Yeah, thank you very much. Actually, I need to clarify, at Meta, we are technology agnostic, so, but my personal view on the 5G, I think we are in the future forum here. But I think to build the future, sometimes it's good to look at the past and draw lessons from the past as well. So here, when it comes to 6G, I think now a number of stakeholders, including telcos and early adopters of 5G, they are now questioning whether 5G delivered to its promise. Because people involved in the development of 5G would remember this magic triangle of the use cases, like the enhanced broadband, the massive IoT and machine-to-machine, as well as the ultra-reliable and ultra-low latency. And the use cases, they didn't follow. And I think for the future to build the 6G is not just a matter of incrementing the digit from 5G to 6G. It's really incrementing the value that the 6G will bring and enable new possibilities by 6G. And I think this is very important to take into consideration.
Lotfi, if I may add on that, you said more bandwidth, lower latency, that's always the promise of the next generation. Yeah. As we are talking about communication, how is communication going to change? For example, in the 70s there was Star Wars, there was the hologram of Princess Leia, some of you remember. That's something that really attracts people and that people love it. So I'm not sure if we will have that with 6G, but I know Meta is working on more immersive experiences. So maybe you can tell us a little bit more what you expect for the future of communication enabled by 6G or whatever technology, Lotfi.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think with the rapid evolution of technology, it's always difficult to predict what will happen in the future, like 10 years from now. But if you look at the evolution of the forms of connecting peoples in the past, as well as the underlying technologies and devices, I think we moved from connecting through text to photos to videos, and the underlying devices and technologies where we moved from desktops to feature phones to smartphones. I think the next logical evolution will be moving from this flat 2D experience to a more immersive 3D experience, which we call the metaverse. So it's a set of connected digital spaces where people can connect, work, play, and create in a very immersive way. And I think some of the key enablers to make this happen in the future, there are four main building blocks or pillars, in my opinion, which are the connectivity, of course, the devices, the creators, as well as the platforms. And all of this will be, I think AI will be the catalyst in all of these four pillars. And I'll come to that later. A few words about each of the pillars. I think when it comes to devices, maybe it's good to clarify some of the misconceptions around the devices for the metaverse. It's true that now we are starting with the AR, VR devices. We have actually, we produce the MetaQuest line of products, which is AR and VR devices, which will be used to offer this immersive experience. And in the future, maybe this will become more user-friendly through advanced smart glasses. But actually, we are building the metaverse to allow a number of different devices to be connected, including smartphones and tablets. And each of the devices will offer a different immersive experience. So this way, the metaverse will be inclusive. On the platform side as well, it's good to clarify that it's not only Meta that is building the metaverse. I think other companies will be building the metaverse. We may have different metaverses, and I think the challenge will be really to make them interconnected for people to move in a seamless way between one metaverse to the other. On the creator side, actually, I was listening to His Excellency, the Minister of AI, this morning, when he said, regardless of the investment you put for future technologies, if you don't have the people that will use the technology and will develop in the technology, this will be somehow useless. And I agree with him, and this applies to the creators in the metaverse, because it will be the creators that will create the value for people to use the metaverse, and it's really important. Maybe back to your question about the holographic communications and whether it will become true or not. I cannot answer that question. We'll see.
Pity.
But what I can say that we are doing a lot of improvements in the way the avatars are developed, and avatars are the representations, our own representations in the metaverse. Actually, if you look at the last interview that our CEO Mark Zuckerberg made in the metaverse, it's available on YouTube. You will see how realistic the avatars are now possible to make. Actually, they are very realistic in reproducing the facial expression, the facial details. Still now we need like a few hours to come up with that scan for realistic reproduction, but I think in the future we'll be able to do this through our smartphones by very quick scan, and we'll be able to use our avatars. How these avatars will be reflected, whether as a form of holograms or other forms, we'll discover.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that actually holograms, is one of the expectations, for 6G. So real life interactions where you could actually be in your car and people would think you're in your office, because the low latency means that the way you interact with people, it's going to completely change the physical and the temporal, distance, between people. So it's going to bring interaction a lot closer. So yeah, holograms is one of the expectations for 6G.
So there's hope for my dream. So, but when I hear that, creating holograms, managing the digital twin or all the data associated with it, we need not only humans to interact with all this data and making that happen, but we also need AI, which is one of the themes of the whole Dubai Future Forum. In many sessions I learned that today. So what do you think is the role of artificial intelligence in the telco space? Some telco carriers like SK Telecom or also Deutsche Telekom are saying we have to become an AI-driven company. So what is, from your perspective, the opportunity, but maybe also the risk of AI in our industry?
I don't know.
Abdul Rahman, you want to start?
Yeah, maybe maybe I'll answer first. Another question you asked about how the future internet could look like, or how the digital infrastructure could look like in the future, before coming back to the risks and especially with the AI. I think today the buzzword is cloud. So everybody's saying, everything is moving to the cloud, whether it's, your devices or, factories, relying on cloud to, run their operations, and health systems connected to the cloud, etc. I think in the future, and because of the latency problem, this comes back to the latency issue, and this is one of the promises of 6G and other technologies, data have to be completely distributed. So you'll have to have processing power, data storage, AI capability, and everything in between in each, I would say, tier or each level. So you'll have it in your body probably in the future. You'll have it in your house. You'll probably have a mini data center in your house to solve the latency problem. You'll have it, in your neighborhood, in the traditional data centers and cloud hubs. So it will be everywhere. It's not just the cloud that we know, Amazon AWS or Google Cloud or whatever. It will be everywhere. And you need the connectivity and the infrastructure to connect everything in between. And some of them would be, something like 6G or, other technologies. It could be satellite. It could be some of the free spectrum that we're talking about. We have a WRC conference, the World Radio Telecommunications Conference, being held in Dubai, and one of the hottest topic is, how do we deal with 6 gigahertz, for example, issue, whether it's
you
free.
mentioned, so I will say a few words about that.
So my point is, data have to be completely distributed everywhere, and you have to have the capabilities everywhere to power, for example, artificial intelligence. And I'll give you a small example. Today, human, if they see a risk, let's say while you're driving your car, how much time it takes for you to realize the risk and take an action. On a normal person, it's 700 milliseconds. Now, if we rely on current technologies, if AI is somewhere in the cloud, it will take at least 100 milliseconds just to get all the information sent back to the AI, and it will take AI. For example, ChatGPT today takes about a second. That's too long. And this is an average person. We are not talking about, Michael Schumacher, responding with, in F1. We're talking an average person. So it needs all these capabilities to be closer to the user. Now, back to your question about AI risk. I think AI is still in its infancy. And a lot of people talking about risks and issues and anticipating problems and, we have to solve it now. I think there has to be a balanced approach because still it's very, very early. And of course, we have to think about principles. We have to think about tools that we can, in a careful way, so that we allow for the technology to it has its space and tackle some of the challenges. Not sure, did I answer the question?
Yeah, very good. So for an AI pioneer like Meta, is taking it slow also a good answer?
Yeah, maybe just before answering the AI part, back to the the Wi-Fi discussion. Actually, I thought I left this a few hundred meters away from here in the WRC.
Back hunting.
It's coming back, exactly. But I think it's good to make the balance. We mentioned LEO satellites, we mentioned fiber, we mentioned 5G, 6G. I think Wi-Fi is as important because Wi-Fi is low power technology, and we believe that the wearables that will be used in the future will actually take advantage of this, the fact that it's low power to save battery. And also Wi-Fi, if it has access to more spectrum, which we are advocating for at WRC, it will solve this problem of low latency. So this is just, we believe that the metaverse will run and evolve over Wi-Fi, at least primarily. Back to the AI question, I think it's good as well to mention that at Meta we were developing and using AI for a decade now. It's not something new. So it's AI that really helped to scale up and develop our platforms. And actually it's used for newsfeed ranking as well as tackling the issues with the harmful content on the platforms to keep them safe for our users. And now with the development of generative AI, it's now, I think we are creating this interface for end users to use the AI by creating content. If you use WhatsApp or Instagram, you'll be able to have a chat companion that can advise you on a number of topics. You can also create stickers, images, and videos. I think this is the next step to make the experience of users richer. When it comes to the use of AI by telcos, I think I'll let my colleague from GSMA cover this, but in my opinion, AI was already used, the form of AI was already used, for example, in the self-optimized networks. And the advances in predictive AI, I think, will help as well in addressing the preventive maintenance, which will really reduce the cost for telcos and improve the quality of service as well. And at Meta, something we did actually, we use an open innovation approach. We developed what we call the Llama 2, which is large language model, and we made it available for researchers and developers as well as industry to use it and to build on it. And one of the use cases actually it's used by telcos because besides this technical parts, the self-optimized as well as the preventive maintenance, the customer interaction is one part that will be really revolutionized by AI, not only by offering users some personalized packages or offers and getting to understand actually each individual users in a better way, but also in the way to interact through, for example, customer care, for example. And the Llama 2 large language model, we are excited that is now being considered to be used actually by telcos in order to help building this new ways to interact with customers. Yeah.
I'll just touch on that very briefly. From a telco perspective, AI will be critical. The networks of the future will be virtualized, they will be automated. Abdurrahman, you talked about bringing the cloud closer to people. Well, in the telco world, that's what we call mobile edge computing. So with mobile edge computing, you're pretty much going to have the network, we call it at the edge, but that is pretty much everywhere. So you don't need to transmit data to somewhere very far for it to get processed there and come back with a feedback. It can be done locally, as close to you as this desk is to us. Now with 5G, we've seen a lot of densification. 6G is even going to bring more densification. The expectation is that your cell phone, your connected wristwatch, your connected devices themselves can even become parts of the network themselves, So we'll begin to talk about things like mesh, networks. With this volume of connected devices and networks and mobile edge computing, you're just going to have to rely on AI to be able to manage that network effectively. Yeah. You can't rely on human beings. There's a limit to what the human beings can do. Going through a large volume of data to detect faults, to improve the network performance, that's the role AI will play, in telco networks. So for a lot of telecoms companies, they're gradually moving away from telcos into what they want to call digital, companies. So yeah, in a few years' time, we may stop using the word telcos and start calling them digital companies.
Yeah.
We'll see, yeah. So I think that was in 35 minutes quite a ride about the future of the telecommunication industries. We covered quite a lot of topics about how the bits and bytes will come to you over the orbit or over 6G or Wi-Fi or whatever. We covered a little bit of how we see new use cases evolving, but I'm sure you have some questions over here in the auditorium. So hands popping up. So Cecile, you were the first one. So
Thank you. So I'm Cecile. I'm pretty sure I have an unpopular question, but I'm still going to ask it. So how do we make sure we do not only connect devices or technologies, but also humanity? Because I have not heard humans once, only users. Because I question myself, what is connectivity in a world where there are more connected devices than people? So the question is sometimes, are we stuck in this technology loop? And how can we create human connectivity again? So my question, also grabbing back to the name of this panel, who are the guardians, is what responsibility would you take as developers, but also should we take to make sure all this connectivity does not dehumanize connection and is inclusive? So, and also who should guard maybe also putting a stop to accelerate digital connectivity instead of like let it decrease humanity? So I know it might not be a popular question, but I'm really curious what your answer will be.
I think it's good here to mention that I mentioned the metaverse and the future of the communication. I think it's important to emphasize that this communications way or the future ways communication people will communicate are not really meant to replace the in-person interactions. I think the in-person interactions will remain there. It will be the most important for all of us. The idea is really to make the online connections more meaningful for people, and actually improving this sense of being closer one another despite of the physical distance. And I think this is the real value that the communication of the future will bring in terms of bringing humans together.
I want to respond, from a slightly different perspective, and I must say it's a really great question. I had to think a bit about my response. It's easy for us, in a fast-moving industry like ours to continue to speed ahead. 5G, 6G, who knows what comes next? But there are still people who don't even have 2G yet. And yes, we're talking about connecting things, connecting devices, but even connecting those people is more important. In a world where we end up with a big digital divide between the connected and the unconnected, that in itself could throw up new challenges that maybe we can't even imagine today. So I think from that perspective, this should be, a kind of like reality check for us in the industry to take a step back and say, yes, it's good to move at top speed as we're currently doing, but let's think about, those who are not yet connected. How can we bring connectivity to them We talked about the coverage gaps. Satellites would play a great, role in that. But beyond the coverage gap, the usage gap is even more important. So digital skills and digital literacy, the right relevant content, to bring those people online, and very importantly, affordable devices, for them to get connected. Many of us can today afford, 4G, 5G devices, but how about those who cannot afford a device more than $20? How can we make those devices, bring those devices to the price point where those people can get connected? And I think when that happens, then that's even going to help, the social interactions you talked about, technology helping us to communicate and interact with each other in a different way from the way we're doing now. But if people are not connected at all, then that doesn't apply to them.
But I'm actually quite positive about the industry, because there are a lot of things happening also in underdeveloped countries where connectivity, the prices are going down tremendously. Even in Germany, we have in the meantime players who offer internet for free. So to a certain extent, connectivity is becoming a human right like water or electricity. But
if I can add just a couple of points here, if you allow me. On the access
over there, and you answer in the meantime.
On the accessibility side, actually, as you rightly mentioned, there are people that cannot afford, and this is actually one of the issues for the usage gap that we are facing now. What we do at Meta, actually, two things. As I mentioned, we are building the metaverse in a way that multiple devices can connect, not only the expensive AR and VR devices. And even for the AR and VR devices, we are doing a lot of efforts to bring the cost down. Last year, we launched what we call the MetaQuest Pro, which is a quite expensive tool. But this year, we launched MetaQuest 3, which is actually at the same level of performance, if it's not even higher, and at low mixed reality at 1/3 of the cost. So this will continue and will allow people actually to gain more access to these devices. And just one last angle on the inclusive access to technology. Last year, I participated in an event in Dubai called the Accessibility Forum or event, which is really the use of technology for people with disabilities. And if you see the possibilities that these AR and VR devices offer for people with disabilities to experience new things that otherwise they will not be able to experience in the real world, you will be amazed. So it's, I think it will add a lot of to that front.
So next question coming up.
Hi, thank you. I'm Mohammed Mkayes. I want to ask you, we faced big challenges actually in our world. Actually, more than 2.5 billions people don't have access to the internet. So how can we fix or we solve these big challenges to ensure all people can have access to new technologies and all the people can participate and build the future?
Okay, yeah, no, it's closely related to your question. It shows that while we may be looking at cutting-edge technology, for human beings, inclusiveness matters a lot. Having everyone, move, maybe not at the same pace, but at least move in the same direction. Okay, so to your question, how do we bring these people online? It's something we do a lot, at the GSMA, and in my role specifically, which involves social research. It's looking at the reasons why they are not connected. Okay, and there are 5 reasons that we usually highlight a lot. The first is the coverage gap. We've talked about that. Satellites going to help us to cover that last mile. Then we have affordability. It's of devices and services. Services are becoming cheaper. Devices but not yet to the price point. that many of these people would need to be able to connect. Digital skills and digital literacy, if they pick up a device, devices today are super complicated. I recently upgraded to the Pixel 8, and I'm struggling to fully learn how to use the Pixel 8. And this is somebody who has been using a smartphone, for God knows how long. So think about, somebody who is then seeing a smartphone for the first time ever. How are they going to interact, with that device? So improving and digital literacy and digital skills, very vital. Relevant content. Yeah. Now, we talk about this a lot, but I just completed a report on Indonesia last week, and that was when it struck me how important, relevant content is. There's a community in Indonesia who in July reached out to the government and said, cut off the internet to our community. Why? They said the content on the internet is changing their traditions and polluting the community. Okay? Now that's because everything they're seeing are not relevant to them. And so they were like, look, if this is what the internet is, we're not interested, right? So cut off 3G, cut off 4G from our community. If they had content that was relevant to them, that reflected their culture, reflected their language, reflected their way of life, they will see the relevance in connectivity. That's how important relevant content is. And the fifth one is security, okay? Online security for vulnerable communities, vulnerable people, women, children, are there content online, that could pretty much be have a negative impact on them. That needs to be dealt with, by governments at all level. There's no content that can pretty much harass people online or make them feel less than they are worth, and things like that. If these 5 things can be tackled holistically, by all stakeholders, governments, telcos, social media companies, pretty much everyone, then maybe, just maybe, we'll begin to see the needle move in the right direction in terms of bringing those unconnected people online.
First of all, thank you very much. Fantastic panel, and I think we're lucky to have such a diverse representation of the broader connectivity space, let's call it. I live in Dubai, so I'm a beneficiary of the hard work that the government does in connectivity and balancing, actually, how that connectivity is done. Question or observation, and we can discuss it later. It doesn't have to take up more time. 2 things. Data monetization is where the big bucks are today. The billion-dollar companies, the unicorns, it doesn't matter what technology they use. The main point is they're gathering data. So the question was really around, as you evolve this network, how do you guys think about the ownership of that data and the privacy? So health, the second part was around health, which is that I can put 50 devices on my body, but at some point, some entity or a cross-section of entities needs to be responsible for measuring the health of its citizens as they do that. But the data ownership question is one that I'm very curious about, because I'm for technology and I think we're going in great places, but that data, who owns that data, where does it reside, will partly drive how connected I let my family be, for example.
We'll leave that for the regulator.
Yes.
So, it's very important subject. Our perspective is that data is very important, of course, and we want to protect the privacy of the users, protect the data. And of course, today we have a law still being in action, but there is a law that follows, I would say, the standards around the world. So, for example, GDPR, trying to take it in a balanced approach, not to over-regulate and not to, intervene very, very early without looking the whole aspect of the value that the data would create. So we're taking it a bit slowly, I would say, but I think because there is a great potential as well, because data is the fuel of the economy. And remember that the GCC countries in general, they're moving away from oil-based economy to a more diverse economy that is based on knowledge and data and technology. And it's one of the key pillars, if you look at all the strategies produced, whether it's in the UAE or as well in the region, they would talk about moving away from, carbon-based and oil-based economy into using, catalysts like digital innovations, So we don't want to also, over-regulate and lose this opportunity, especially with all the geopolitical issues, the vision that you see around, you see a lot of conflicts and challenges that happened since COVID, and then, political conflicts and economical wars, I would say, cold wars. So we have to be also, we have to look at it from a holistic point of view, because when you talk about digital economy and internet, it's borderless. You can't work in an isolation. You can't just think about, I'll come up with this law and I'll do it this way and everybody will follow. No, internet is a whole network of networks, and it doesn't, if you come up with a law, it's okay. You come up with a law, but does it mean that everybody will follow it? They're not under your jurisdiction. So you have to look at where is the world is moving, and you have to play along as well. So I think your concern is a very valid one, and I think we're trying to balance it in a way that it protects you. We have a very stringent laws when it comes to cybersecurity and all of that, but at the same time, allow this innovations and digital economy to flourish, and we want to be the center of that. We missed industrial revolution, I would say. You don't see, gasoline cars being produced in GCC. We missed that for historic reason, of course, but we want to be part of the future industries like the digital industry, and we want to be in the forefront and the leader position, not in the back seat and consumer position.
So with respect of time, I think we have to come to an end. I think balancing is a nice ending word. That's what you said. We have to balance our future. I think there are a lot of opportunities, but there are also some risks and challenges, and we are aware of them. If you have great solutions for them, we are happy. And I'm very happy that you attended and that you were my panel. So thank you very much to all of you.
Thank you.